Hello, everyone. Today I will be making a scene based off a concept art that I created for an unused ending for my adaptation of War of the Worlds. If you want to look at it more, our YouTube manager, Marty, will put a link in the description to our ArtPal gallery. If you should want to look at it forever, we'll be selling prints. But without further ado, let us get into the construction of the scene. To start with, we'll need our two principal characters. The main focal point of the scene is these two astronaut fellows. So we'll be getting them posed for the scene. Exactly as they are in the picture, of course. We want to shut off procedural animation and procedural walk. Set them on non-movable and non-collidable. Now let's get this adventurous gentleman here. Clearly the leader of this group of individuals on the planet Mars. And now we'll get his friend, who is in mid-stride. So we'll simply pose him as if he were walking. There we go. Leg should be a little bit further out. And this heel should be closer in. There we go. There's our two principal players. Next, we're going to quickly grab a Martian from my War of the Worlds collection. He's going to be a little bit different from the Martians that I depicted on Earth. Since the gravity on Mars is not as strong as the gravity on Earth, these Martians stand upright on the ends of their tentacles. So we'll raise him up a bit. Also gives you a bit of an idea how I created the Martians. As you can see the invisible legs below. Now what you do is simply pose the tentacles. To make it look as if the Martian is standing. Yes, just get that right in there. That was a bit of a callback to the very first meeting of humans and Martians. I will be giving the Martian a white flag, similar to the first humans who greeted the Martian tripod. It isn't necessary, but I find it an interesting reversal of roles. We're going to make quite a simple pole. Not sure what it's constructed out of. Maybe the Martians have wood on their planet. Martian trees. Or maybe it's some sort of synthetic Martian plastic. Since this is a still scene, it should be quite easy to make the flag out of a three-dimensional sculpt rather than using paint flecks, which would be my ordinary first choice for a wavy flag. It's quite easy to make a flag by simply taking a cylinder and sectioning it in half. Put the wholeness to almost maximum. And then simply reverse the spheres. And you have a wavy flag with a ripple in it. And make it a little tattered. What the Martians used to make this flag, the material thereof, is somewhat of a mystery to me. Let's just group them for easy positioning. I might have to modify the tentacle slightly in order to give the effect that it is grasping the flag. Let's see now, let's set it to blend just a little bit. I rather like constructing still scenes in Dreams. It's greatly easier than constructing games. You don't have to worry about collision issues and how you're going to animate the tentacles and all that sort of thing. Now we're simply going to scope in and make the original tentacle end invisible. And see what kind of settings we have here. That way we can easily replicate the shininess. A little bit less rough than the original. but it shouldn't be noticed from long distance. Now that we have our Martians, let's make some Martian Dirt. I feel like going for something a bit orange, even though technically the planet is red. It's not all that difficult to make dirt in Dreams, in my opinion. Some people may have different attitudes toward the creation of dirt, but I believe it's quite simple. Just take a squat sphere and put it on blend and copy it out. Once you have a nice patty of dirt, simply take the smear shape tool, set it to surface snap, and add these various little bumps and ridges. You don't even have to be discriminate about how you add them. Just sort of go crazy. Put them everywhere. It may be advisable to change the color of these bumps in order to add to the effect that there are varying soil compositions. Little rocks and pebbles and such. Sand mixed in. Who knows what else? Mars is a very strange planet. Wonder why we haven't gone there yet. Seems like a nice place. Now for a little lighter dirt here and there. Now dirt is not something that requires a lot of detail. Therefore, we're going to lower the detail of this sculpt a good deal so that we get a nice effect, you see. Maybe add some impasto for extra effect, and some scatter. Another thing you can do is change this secondary setting here, so there's little dark bits in between. Occasionally makes pretty good dirt. In this case, I'm going to forego it. Now we'll add some lighting to the scene. Before we do any landscaping, it's always important to have a light source. I imagine the light coming from about there, maybe. Giving us a good look at our two aliens. In this case, the humans would be aliens on Mars. Let's see. Take the fleck density down a touch. Not sure what color the Martian sky would be, but I imagine it being sort of a yellowish tinge. Or maybe orange. The lighting can be easily rectified or modified. Now we'll just copy out some Martian dirt. Oh, another thing you might want to do. When making dirt, always remember to put the physical cost on low if you're going to copy out these patties. It's very economical when building large scenes. That way they take up less gameplay. And dirt requires very little collision, to be honest. Excuse me. Bit of interior gas just escaped. Let's see now. Yes, it's roughly equivalent to the scene depicted in the art of mine. Let's see. Since it is merely a still image, we needn't worry about this half of the scene. However, I believe that the dirt could use some variation in pigment. And perhaps not that much variation. Just a little lighter. Sort of like some sort of sandy Martian dirt. That's good. In some areas I want it to be perfectly flat. There. Move this over just a tad. Yes, give the sense of a trail of some kind. Who built this trail? The Martians, of course. Who else would build this trail? As for why these two individuals from Earth landed right near a Martian trail, it would probably just be coincidence. Perhaps the sunlight should be orange. I haven't decided yet. Well, we'll figure that out later. For now, we have another problem to move on to. We shall be constructing the Earth vehicle. I'm going to make it out of a similar substance to these backpacks they're wearing, for internal consistency. Probably some sort of Earth-like metal, either iron or copper. Not certain. Not certain at all. Put it on clipped mirror. This will be the device that the Earthmen arrived in. Which is, of course, heavily inspired by the similar craft from H.G. Wells' First Men in the Moon. It's actually quite easy to make this shape in Dreams by merely using the kaleidoscope. Once you stamp out a spear, it is the center of your sculpt. So always be sure that you have it facing upright. If it's a cylinder, never have the cylinder on its side, otherwise the kaleidoscope will be reoriented. Let's flatten the top a bit. And the bottom for consistency, even though no one's going to see the bottom. Yes, our craft is certainly coming along. It's taking on a very nice shape. Now the framework might be a bit difficult, but I'm going to try my best to come up with a simple solution for the frame. Slightly darker tinge. There we go. Let's see if it's lined up correctly. We'll use our kaleidoscope as a basis. Take it off of clipped mirror. That seems to be about right. There we go. The frame of the sphere is taking shape. We might use clipped mirror for this. See if we can find the proper angle. Oh, here we go. I must say, I appreciate Wells's terminology for these futuristic devices. Sphere is a rather simple and very descriptive way of describing this device. Same with the Martian fighting machines. It's very nice just to have something be called what it is instead of a very technical and sophisticated term. But I suppose that's all up to the preference of the audience. I myself value simplicity. There we go. The frame is almost complete. Let's extend it a bit. I was expecting this part to be a little bit more difficult, but luckily for me, turns out constructing this shape is not actually a big deal. It's actually quite simple. Let's see if we can take this and duplicate it for the bottom. I imagine the humans, similar to the Martians, must have used some sort of cannon as a propulsion device to propel this sphere into space towards Mars. A concept which these days is, well, perhaps a little bit impractical, But nevertheless, interesting. I'm not sure if it is entirely impossible to propel an object into space using a cannon, or what the downsides of such a endeavor would be. I imagine securing the crew and keeping them from becoming mashed potatoes might be difficult. But who knows? Might be cheaper than using rocket fuel. Feasibly, if one were in space already, a cannon would be much shorter and easier than using an afterburner, and it would require less force to propel an object in space. So perhaps, maybe, cannons of that nature might really be used eventually. Who knows? Can't really be sure. Now, I'm not exactly sure what these little knobs are, but they make the sphere look more interesting. Perhaps they're to dampen impact and prevent rolling? That's probably what they're for. They really do add to the sphere's look, though. Kind of makes it more than just a simple shape. I believe there was a First Men in the Moon movie which had very similar apparatus to these. I'm not aware if it was actually mentioned in the book. It had these little knobs sticking off of it. I watched that movie frequently as a child. It was strangely boring and yet interesting. I liked the stop-motion effects that they employed, but in some parts it was very slow. Children are not given to patience. Let's see. Up the metalness of it. That's very odd. Let's add a little hole right here for our astronaut friends. I think I might up the detail on this sculpt a tiny bit. There we go. I'll also add some dirt here and there. Our sphere needs a little bit of extra details. There's no way that you fire something like this out of a cannon and have it land looking pristine and lovely. Yes, let's see. Put some snap to surface. And of course, a little bit of Martian dirt would be evident, having landed on the surface of Mars. No, I forget, the frame is separate. There we go. Some nice Martian dirt. And now for some darkening, most likely caused when the cannon was fired. Some scorching here and there. So now our sphere is ready. And we're beginning to get something approximate to the image. Might need a little bit of a crater. So I'll make some quick crater dirt, which shouldn't be too difficult. Might want to make it slightly darker. Actually, it might be a better idea is to take this already existing dirt and simply add a lot more bump to it. Very similar to how I created the scene where the first cylinder lands on Earth. Using a very similar method to create the scorched dirt and such. Yes, let's just put a lot of lumpiness. Lots of lumpiness. Now we're going to darken it a tad. The extreme heat of impact would probably scorch the soil. Definitely. Don't want to go overboard. Let's see. I must admit that perhaps more soil than this would be displaced realistically if an object this large were to hit the surface, but we're not going to beat around the bush. We're on a clock and we must capture the image. I wish I had thought of that when I was drawing the image. There should have been more dirt. But that looks nice enough. And now for some smoke. Luckily, the smoke does not require movement, as it is merely a still image. very flat smoke. Little thin trails here and there. Let's add some waxiness. I'm not entirely happy with that particular smoke trail. I think I'll try something a bit different. Yes, let's give it a little bit of wispiness. Set it to fade out. Now for the big, large smoke plume. To the right, it's very billowy. No, we don't need this anymore. There we go, almost there. Our image is almost complete. Now to make the hills in the background. I also might add a bit of red weed or red creeper to kind of, keep internal consistency. Mars is supposed to be covered in red weed, as described in the novel. I made the soil red as well, but figured there was no harm in making everything red. An easy way to make something seem more distant than it is to darken it a tad. Hills are mostly created by perspective. Therefore, even if someone can't see that it's a flat patty, it looks like a hill from the distance. Now in the picture, there are some rather timid Martians in the background. I'm going to remove this saliva, as I don't think it's entirely necessary to have it visible. I'm going to make this Martian tentacle apparent again. See if we can give it sort of an anticipating pose. There's our timid Martians for the background. And we have a few tripods in the distance. I might lower their detailing a little bit. I don't think it's necessary that we have so much detail for things that are mostly in the background. Turn off all their animations and such. Don't want them colliding with anything either. So, let's get it in position. There's one striding in this direction. Programming the movement of the tripods was very difficult in the actual game. It was one of the challenges of creating War of the Worlds. The public version that I have available doesn't actually have the same movement patterns that the final version does. Move the body down. There we go. Now for the slightly more slightly closer Martian tripod. I might move our smoke plume to get a better look at him. Now I'm sure most people would probably find it somewhat hard to believe that the Martians would be trustworthy. After all, the Martians seem intensely, what is the word? Savage and pretty vicious, but I chose to make a more optimistic ending. One that utilizes the ideas present in Wells's novel, while also expanding upon them, with the possibility that perhaps humans and Martians don't necessarily have to be enemies. See if we can get this pose right. This leg needs to be all the way down. Of course, this is merely for perspective. We all know that his leg can't actually fold in that way. When you're creating a picture, though, you can play with physics and positioning a bit. Might use a spotlight. Going to mess around with the lighting a bit till I get something that I am satisfied with. Fog is an excellent way to create horizon lines, I generally find. Give the vague sense that the sun is rising. I think we'll move this over here a bit. Move this down a bit. And change the lighting of the spotlight. Get something really, orangey. We might move our gentlemen closer and make them a little bit larger to get perspective. I also think I'll change the direction of this smoke plume. There we go. Let's see what it looks like all together. Not too bad. I rather would like a more defined Martian shadow. One moment. Going to experiment with this platforming shadow here. Nope, that does not suit my desires. Well, we'll leave the shadow for now. We must get on to the red weed, of course. I'm going to move these fellows over a bit. Get them in the shot a little bit more. Move our Martian friend and his flag. Might as well just scope this in. For easy movement. I think I might move the flag itself so that it catches the light a little bit more. Or make it waxy. There we go, I think we've got the shot. Little spotlight might help put some really strong lighting on the scene. Not that strong. See what we end up with here. It's a little bit too foggy. I think what I might do is test this out. Get this out of the way. In order to make a synthetic shadow for the Martian, I'm going to create a fake Martian shadow sculpt. All you have to do to make a synthetic shadow, for whatever reason, if you're compelled to make one, is set cast shadows to always. Then make it invisible and non-collidable. This only works in stills, of course, but it works. There, I think I like that. That's good. That is what we need. Now for the Martian weed, as I promised. I will be using a similar methodology to what I used in my War of the Worlds game. Which was to paint these sort of, weedy roots. I loosened them a great deal. I might have them sharper for this image, just to reflect the light a little better. And another thing I did with the red weed was to take this cubist paint fleck and draw these lines. I'll just loosen up our weed a little bit. Might be a little bit too, opaque. Add some impasto to the weeds, a little bit of scatter. I think what I'll do is I'll make these parts. No. I'll sculpt in, and I'll make selectively just this waxy. It seemed to work better in the original dream I created. We'll leave it alone for now. Little weed here. Little weed there. Almost looks like water. Now that is interesting. I think what I'll do is quickly modify this to be water. Yes, that looks really nice. It's unfortunate we can't get the lighting. Maybe we'll try that. Let's see if we can just turn the light a little bit this direction to get the light on the water. Take out the sun's visibility so it doesn't spoil the image. And add some synthetic lighting since we've switched the sun's position. Lower the opacity of these clouds. They're far too visible. Move this one up. That's nice. And of course, more red weed. There's never too much. There we go. I think we maybe are done with our scene now. Something I might do, this is not necessary, but it is interesting. An easy way to highlight objects is to put a little bit of fog in the distance. Lower the brightness a bit. We can highlight our furtive Martian friends with the fog. We can even highlight the probe itself. Now that roughly is the image I'm going for. However, I think that this particular thing could be better lit. Brighten it up a great deal. And move those pesky tentacles out of the way. They were a lot of trouble to make. Tentacles are not the easiest thing to construct in Dreams. There are many different methodologies, but they're never going to be easy, in my opinion. And there we have it. Our image. If you found this video entertaining and helpful, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. I will be doing further regarding War of the Worlds, making another video showcasing unused concept art, which I hope to have on my art pal for further viewing. But in the meantime, have a nice day.